Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Never an Afterthought Show. My name, Afolabi Imoukhuede, and I remain the author of the Never an Afterthought book and the anchor of this show. I trust we had a great week, or that you are having a great week so far, and that you're also keeping safe and you're keeping well in these times. Very important. Please don't lose guard. Be sure to use your mask once you're in public. Once you're in the public or in any public space, please use your mask. And in using your mask, use your mask appropriately. Cover your nose and obviously cover your mouth. I mean, I see a lot of us wearing masks and it's below our nose, or some of us are wearing the mask on our chin. Please, that's not the right way to wear your mask. Just wear your mask properly. Cover your nose, especially in public spaces, and also wash your hands as often as you can. Where you can't, the hand sanitizer should not be far from you. I saw a CDC report a few days ago talking now about Ebola. So really don't even know what's going on, right? We have COVID to deal with. Now we're talking about Ebola. So regardless, whether it's Ebola, whether it's COVID, just please maintain proper hygiene. Keep safe. And also to be out, please be sure that it's very essential. If it's not essential for you to be out, try as much as possible to stay indoors. The times are perilous, but we trust God that He will keep us through these times, and indeed we will all make it to the other side. Let's not forget our hashtag, the Never an Afterthought. That's a hashtag to continue and to join and to continue this conversation across all our social media channels. Twitter at NAA_book. Facebook and Instagram at NA Afterthought. Of course, you know that I love to read from you, so drop me a note, podcast at neveranafterthought.com, and you can also leave your comments on the channel wherein you're listening or watching me. Okay, so today is going to be very exciting. Like I promised you, we are in for a treat, and I'm sure we've all been enjoying ourselves, all the episodes we've ran since January. And as I mentioned to us, Side Hustle 2 is going down. We're getting ready for Side Hustle 2. So stay tuned with us. Don't miss it. But today I have a very important guest, a very, very important guest, and one that you all will love. I'm going to introduce him shortly. But today we're going to be discussing the topic tech investment. We know tech, we said something about COVID, the times that we're in, that COVID is an accelerant, and what is done is accelerated digital adoptions. And we started talking digital from last year, actually, when we talked about fourth industrial revolution and those skills that we need to compete with machines, those skills that humans need to have an edge over the machines or over the computers. So we've started talking tech since last year, but this year, a few weeks ago, we had Caller when we talked about art and tech, and I'm sure that from the views, I see that the views keep increasing. It means that a lot of you are going back there to watch. Of course, it's there for all of us to catch up. But today we're going to be talking about tech investment, investing in tech, and even from the poll that we ran, about continued side hustles. We know that one of the winners or the top gainers in those topics was the one that had to do with electronic payment, POS. There was also the side hustle around investing in internet support services. So it tells me that we are all very digital compliant, and if we're not, COVID has taught us to become digital compliant. So we're going to be talking about tech investment today, but we'll go on a short break, and right after that, I'll introduce our guest for today, and we're just going to fire right in. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. If you're just joining us, you're welcome to another exciting episode of the Never an Afterthought show. Just before the break, I was talking about the topic we're going to be discussing today, which is tech investment, technology investment, or investment in technology. Let's recall that 2 weeks ago, I think it was, when we had a caller I know on set, he told us something interesting about technology. He said technology is not computers. Technology is not software. Technology is also not coding. They are all constituent parts of technology, but that's not what technology is. But rather, technology is that confluence between systems, processes, everything that you need to create an improvement in a system. So that's really what a technology solution is. So yes, coding and software and code, they are all part of technology, but that's not really what technology is. And so I thought to do that so that when we're talking about our topic today, which is tech investment, we would be very clear that we're building on that episode of Art and Tech. So today I'm super excited about my guest for today, and I'm going to read his profile in a minute. My guest, I won't mention his name. His name will be the last thing I'll mention. But my guest is the general partner and co-founder of Future Africa. Now, Future Africa is that platform that provides capital, coaching, and indeed mentoring for a community, what they call community for mission-driven innovators. It's a platform that provides coaching. It's a platform that provides capital and mentoring for what you call a community for mission-driven innovators. Very interesting, and he will tell us what he means by that. My guest today is also helped in building Andela, Flutterwave, which are two of Africa's technology companies, or two of Africa emerging or emerged technology companies. I guess the moment I mention Andela, you probably already know who my guest is. It's my pleasure today to welcome my brother, my friend, my buro, Iyinoluwa Aboyeji. Greetings, bro.
Greetings. We gotta stay COVID compliant.
I know, right? I know.
I'll give you a proper handshake and the hug.
I know, right? How you doing?
I'm very well.
How many weeks? I was chasing you.
Forgive me. I've been, you know how it is, right? Like, I've just been trying to find our feet, trying to make sure that things were stable. So as soon as, now I'm the one chasing you.
I know, right? Well, thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
It's really a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, my pleasure. Anytime. You know, the thing about it is, you know, one of the things last week I was telling our audience that one of the ethos of this platform, the Never an Afterthought show, is that ethos of from Nigeria to the world.
Absolutely.
From Nigeria to the world. And, you know, anytime I think about that whole topic or that whole philosophy or that whole subject, you're clearly one of the names that, you know, that ring because, and I think we need to also begin to use ourselves as that example for many others. Nigeria is 200 million population, right? So you are one of the 200. So after when I take you away, you now have 199,999,000. So we've got to use, you know, some of you are success stories to really encourage the remaining 199 million plus people. And that's why it's my pleasure and really privilege to have you on our show today.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. How's it been? Staying safe?
Staying safe.
Well?
You know, I've mostly been home.
Okay.
But then, you know, every now and then I might have to go to a meeting, but obviously, you know, we take all the precautions. You know, so, but we thank God.
Good.
We thank God for sustenance.
Good. So yes, today we want to discuss tech investment.
Absolutely.
That's no strange topic to you, right?
At all.
Are you sure?
This is what we do.
This is
what we've
home.
been doing.
So, but before we go into the topic, before we
yes.
jump into it, I want our viewers to learn about you. Let's know who this Iyi is, you know, and don't rush. Just tell us the story of Iyi. I mean, I know we know about you from what we've read and what we know, Andela, Flutterwave. We know that, right? I also know that you're Omo Baba Foursquare, you know? And the reason I can never forget that is because Foursquare was one of my churches growing
Absolutely.
up.
Well,
So I
thank
know
you.
your dad is the general overseer of Foursquare Gospel
Yes,
Church.
yes,
I mentioned Foursquare in my book. That was where I picked up librarian, a youth librarian at some point. You know, so Foursquare, you know, I'm very connected with the Foursquare Church.
Fantastic.
So we know that, but tell us that which we do not know. Tell us about
Absolutely. You know, I mean, one of the funniest things about being me is there's not much you don't know if people don't know. I don't know how to put it, right? Because everything is out there. But I would say, you know, like, I mean, first of all, I grew up in this neighborhood. I've lived in Yaba for whatever, like, I was born here.
So you're a Lagos boy?
I'm in Lagos. I was born in Lagos.
Oh,
I was born in Lagos.
Interesting.
But I was, you know, when I turned 10, my father, you know, he moved to the Niger Delta to try to help kind of manage the whole Niger Delta crisis issue. So when my father moved to Niger Delta, I moved along with him.
Where exactly?
In Warri.
Oh, okay. So you moved to Warri. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've
but
got
I only
in Warri
spent
like me as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I went to Federal Government College.
Federal Government College. Yeah. I lived a walking distance from Federal Government College.
Oh, wow.
And I went to lesson there.
Okay.
But when I got into boarding school in Abuja, so I went to Loyola Jose College in Abuja. So I got to boarding school in Abuja. So from that time, you know, I was only experiencing Warri on holidays.
Okay.
To be quite frank, but again, most of my time was spent in Loyola in the north. So I mean, my from that perspective, my upbringing was very Nigerian.
So you really did
get to see.
Yeah.
You got to see different parts of Nigeria and so on. But I'd say there were a bunch of experiences that I had across all these different places that really kind of shaped the kind of person that I am today. So, you know, when I was growing up, you know, when I was 1-2 years old, my father wasn't he wasn't working at Shell at the time. I think he started working at Shell a few years after I was born. Then he was kind of still figuring out jobs and stuff like that. But watching him as a young man kind of get the opportunities that he was able to get in this country, and kind of grow to the kind of person that he is, really made, you know, what people might call a Nigerian dream extremely real for me, right? Especially understanding the kind of background that we had. Like my father's father was a butcher, right? So it wasn't really like son of anybody, just an average person. And, you know, the heights he was able to rise to in this country, you know, is just a testament to the kind of country this country should be, right? Now, you know, but I watched the decline, if you can call it that, in my own lifetime. You understand what I'm saying? So if you start from 1991 when I was born, all the way to, you know, 1999, really kind of seeing how tough things got for a lot of people, how many more people we had to support, people lining up at our house to be able to call loved ones in other countries. You know, really watching that decline and how much more difficult it was for young people to get the same opportunities as my father did, really, really struck a chord with me and made me start to understand, you know, some of the work that has to happen. You understand what I'm saying? For us to really have the right kind of country. Then, you know, I went to Loyola. While I was at Loyola, you know, Sosoliso, December 10th, 2005 happened. I was, you know, I was actually booked for that flight and I missed it. I missed it because I decided to take another flight. But again, you know.
So they were your schoolmates?
They were my schoolmates. Yeah, I was 60 of them. I knew a lot of them. They were juniors, they were seniors. They were classmates of mine. I think we lost about 10 of my classmates.
Wow.
So, like, I knew those people and I knew how promising they were. Many of them were extremely smart. Who knows what they could be doing today. But then just watching those lives wasted, no one really held accountable for what happened, right? Again, another chord. Moving, you know, I had an opportunity after I finished from Loyola. I went to Ibadan, you know, spent some time with a professor out there, doing some economic research and analysis. And then from there, I went to Canada, which was a beautiful experience, because that was the first time I was really exposed to people from all over the world. I know that I'd never seen Oyinbo people before, but it wasn't the same way. You know, I had Chinese in my school, I had Russians, I had Americans, whoever, right? Because of international school. So I kind of got to see what other people were like, spend time in the United Nations afterwards, before I went to university proper. working for a company called the World Youth Alliance. I was interning for them in New York. Then getting into university, got into university again, the same thing. But then, one thing that really kind of changed my trajectory was, I had met a friend on the first day of school in university, and we had lost touch because my university was very weird. We didn't have a purely academic program. You had to work and get, I think, about 2.5 years of experience over 5 years to be able to graduate. So if you didn't have that 2.5 years of work experience, you couldn't graduate.
Oh, wow. Even as bachelors?
Even as bachelors, right? So, but they gave you those opportunities. So you could apply and you'd get like what we call here IT.
IT, so it's internships.
Internships, yeah. But their internships were weird because instead of you waiting till like your last year or your second to last year, they did the internships every other term.
Wow.
So you could be, when you resumed school, you could go on internship the next quarter, the next term, and then come back to school.
But I think I like that.
No, very, very practical.
Because that's actually applied learning.
Very
you're
applied.
Picking up something in school and you're having an opportunity to immediately apply.
That was it was German model, right? Oh, so wow. that was their thing, right? So I had a friend, a particular friend, Pierre Iris. I met him on the first day of school. He went off to co-op in Silicon Valley, lost touch, obviously, because then we're now on alternate terms. And I was doing a co-op term at the university newspaper.
Yeah.
And then, we just kind of randomly met up. I wasn't expecting to see him. We just met up. And then he started telling me about what was going on in Silicon Valley. And that was how I got invested in tech, because prior to that time, I just thought about tech as something that other people did. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's Twitter. Somebody made Twitter. I mean, it could never be you. There's Gmail. Somebody made Gmail. It could never be you.
Somebody but not you.
Somebody but not you, right? Like people like me don't do that kind of work. So me, I was just happy, I was in law, human rights law, the usual, causing trouble. Yeah, it's fine. I can write newspaper, I can publish it. So, but that just changed my mindset, because I was like, okay, somebody can sit down at a computer, my age, code something up, and the thing is worth billions. That was a huge mindset shift for me. Anyway, we start working together on a company while we're in school. So we started building a business called booknetter.com, which was really, it wasn't a great idea, to be honest. It was just like, how do we build, at the time we used to use Blackboard in school for our courses.
Yeah.
So how do we build a better Blackboard? That was really kind of the startup. Obviously that didn't work, because schools don't give kids that are still in school $500,000 contracts to build school management systems. So we pivoted and now build this social learning product that help people collaborate to like answer past questions, because, Waterloo was very past questions focused. So I did that. That was my first learning with startups. I spent 3 years there building this out. When I graduated, we sold the business to a professor. Now, but what I learned really from that whole thing was, one, I learned I didn't really care about the problems that people in Canada have, I felt like I had bigger problems at home. So I was like, look, Second of all, there's just so many mistakes we had the space to make, right? Because we weren't depending on it for survival, right? It was like we had school. We tried to do as much school as we could. We spent a lot of time there. And then third of all, I had one interesting experience during that whole 3 years. What the school did for us was they built an entrepreneurship center called Velocity. They were actually forced to do it, because what had happened was there was a kid who had become very wealthy. His name was Ted Livingston. He had built an app that allowed people to share their music that they were listening to on the BlackBerry. And he became very wealthy.
Was a student in your school?
Was a student. He was a student. He just dropped out.
Okay.
And just to understand the economy of Waterloo, University of Waterloo is only famous for one thing and one thing only, at least at the time I was there. BlackBerry. That was the headquarters of BlackBerry. BlackBerry was like a third of the campus. And most of the people who worked, like if you wanted a very easy co-op term, you went to work for BlackBerry, because we were just outside school, was like literally being on campus. So this guy had built something on top of the BlackBerry network and so on and so forth. And people liked it, and Ted, whatever. So he gave back $1 million to the school to set up this entrepreneurship program called Velocity. Wow. And this program was then developed by the school, became a bigger center. So I was part of the entrepreneurs, me and Pierre with our company were part of the entrepreneurs in this space. And what had happened with what had happened really was we got so much, not just training, but just space to make a lot of mistakes. And, you know, the one day, you know, we used to have this joke. We used to call it working 5 to 9. So because there were bus routes, and if you don't get on the bus in the morning, you obviously can't make it to school. Yeah. And if you don't get on the last bus at night, you can't make it back home. Mm-hmm. So the buses started running at 5 and they ended at 9. So 5 a.m. in the morning, we'll get up, go to school, right? And go to the office. So we got on this 5 a.m. bus. I ended up at my office, saw it was barricaded. Like everywhere was, barricaded. Snowing morning, very ice cold. So, I asked somebody around there, it's like, don't talk to us, we're police. So I was like, hope somebody didn't commit suicide. Went back to there's a coffee shop next door. So I just went there and just hung out until these police people go. And then people start streaming in around 6:30, 7. And then what happened was, somebody came in and, I knew the person. I was like, do you know what's going on in the, it's like, oh, dude, you haven't heard what happened on the news? And he was like, and they're like, what? And it was like, well, this company, they were called BufferBox. They just got acquired by Google for $30 million. Now, this team we're talking about, like, let's say I was sitting here, the desk was here. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I knew the people.
In Velocity Hall.
Same Velocity. Like, it was like, Yeah. So it just flipped a switch for me that, look, it's not a joke. Like, you can actually change your life. And then later I'm gisting with my boy and he's like, oh, I bought an island. So that was the mindset I got into this whole thing with. It was like, look, I can slave away for the next 18 years as a professor or whatever. I would never be able to make this kind of life-changing wealth in the period of time that they did. Because these guys, keep in mind, I think they graduated the year before. So these were like 23, 24-year-olds, right? And these guys already made it, right? And they got full-time employment at Google, wow. $30 million in their bank accounts, paid off their investors, all that stuff. So I was very determined because I was like, man, like if these guys can do it, and me too, I can do it. So that really kind of shifted my mindset when it came to entrepreneurship. And it's one of the biggest reasons I moved to tech. But yeah, so I came back to Nigeria in 2013, shortly after that, because I was like, if we're thinking about it objectively, I don't really care about the problems that people are trying to solve here. And, most of the opportunities in this market they're not very great. It's not about grit. It's just like, it's just like code and all that. So it's like, okay, let me come back to Nigeria. Things are still new. Things are still early. So I came back to Nigeria. I was living in Abuja. And then I spoke to NUC. I was trying to explain to them that, look, maybe you're offering about 400, 500 courses across all Nigerian universities, across all disciplines. The world has changed. There's all these things called MOOCs where you can learn JavaScript, Python, blah, blah, blah. And I understand what the constraints are. Like, you don't have professors who know Golang. How could they, right? Like, Golang is just in the last 3, 4, 5 years. So you can't possibly know those like, there's no professor in the world. Okay, but there are all these schools abroad who have now built courses around it. So why don't we figure out a way where Nigerian universities can teach those courses and then share revenue for the students who decide to take those courses? They share revenue with NUC, the school, and the people who want the content. And I tried to put it together, but NUC didn't get it. So I had to pivot out of that. And then I started to sell online degrees. And at first I was trying to get kids in school to like, hey, why do you need to do this? You can just take it online. And realized that the real market for online degrees was branch managers in big banks who wanted an MBA so they could move to HQ. So we started selling University of Liverpool MBAs, Walden University BBA programs.
And this would be online, right?
Online, completely online.
Yeah, so
very expensive,
yeah,
but completely online. So did this, worked really, really well.
Wow.
Banks were even happy to give loans to their own employees to take this, because basically they tie you down with the loan, right?
So this started as a hustle.
Pure hustle, right? Pure hustle. So I did this for a few years. It was decent business. I was making money. And then, one day, something happened. There's this immigration crisis. Yeah, there was a recruitment crisis. So, I was coming back home. I used to live in Eric Moore. I was coming back home. I had a meeting in VI. I was coming back home on a Saturday, saw the place was blocked, got down from the vehicle, was walking, and then asked somebody what happened. It's like, oh, people died, or this one down. I was just like, it's very shameful. Kept it in the back of my mind. 2 weeks later, I had to go and see one of my investors in New York. So I went. And then Jeremy, who was my partner at Andela, somebody I'd met when I was coming back to Nigeria. I'd been introduced to him. And what basically happened was, I was like, look, Jeremy, had done very well at the time. And he was like, okay, let me send him an email. Maybe he'll meet with me. Maybe he'll be able to give us some angel funding, all that stuff. So I sent him an email, didn't reply. Was in New York for an entire week, didn't reply. For some reason, I just moved my flight.
So what were you seeking funding for at this time?
No, for this business of helping people take online, because my thought was, look, how do you scale it or have a bunch of other courses online? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People who are young professionals don't want to go abroad for masters. They can do the master's program locally, but maybe find cheaper courses in Cape Town, stuff like that. So anyway, I spoke to Jeremy. Jeremy finally responds on the last day of the second week after I was supposed to have left. And I just immediately picked up, went straight to the restaurant for me to meet him in. Sat down with him. We had a conversation. Told me all the ways that my idea was not going to work. And he made some very valid points about, margins and stuff like that, which if you wanted to build a small business, it would be great. But if you want to build something venture capital, it wouldn't work. And then we started talking about that immigration incident, because it was like, look, one of the things I struggle with is I don't think university education model in the US works in Africa. Because it was like, the challenge with the university education model in the US is that it's all backed by student loans. So whether or not you actually get value from it it doesn't really matter in the short term. Ultimately, you get a job and you pay. And if you don't get a job, you don't have to pay. Exactly. So it's very simple. But here, like, if you're not getting a degree where you're getting a job that actually pays you enough, it doesn't make sense. Then second of all, for those degrees, access is limited because the school is physically constrained. So that's why you now hear people, they gave me chemistry, which obviously chemistry is not very employable. The best you can do is be a teacher with a chemistry degree in Nigeria. And the more lucrative engineering, lawyer, they're very difficult to come by those things. So it's like, okay, why don't you create kind of like something that's very focused on the skills you need to get employed? So if you spend 4 years with us, immediately you're in a job. In fact, during the 4 years, you're in a job. So at the end of the day, you just skyrocket in terms of labor wage value. So we talked about it, and I was like, look, the honest truth is what it boils down to is money. If you can fund it, I'll do it. And it was like, no problem, I'll fund it. I'll be chairman or whatever. So, on the back of that say-so, I did an experiment with my team. The experiment was amazing. We found about 700 people applied. We selected these 15 people. Out of the 15 people, we got 5 who were solid developers, 4 men and 1 girl. And then we just started building on top of that.
So how did you decide that the skill you wanted to build this model on was developed?
So at first so it's very funny you asked that. At first we had talked about Salesforce engineering, which is something I still think has a lot of legs. So what Salesforce engineering is like a lot of companies that do sales use Salesforce and Salesforce tools to be able to like automate the process of getting the lead list and making calls and all that stuff, scripting and all that.
Yeah.
So we thought, oh, that would be where to focus. But then when we went online, we realized that people who were getting development jobs were getting paid higher. So we just had to just go for development jobs right away. So that was how we got there. So, you know, going through all this, you know, with Andela, you know, the rocket ship growth, seeing everything, just really kind of reshaped my mind about what the society believes is possible in Nigeria and what I know now is possible in Nigeria. But, you know, when, you know, 2.5 years in, started to get a bit restless. The options were, do you go to business school or do you start another company? And I just thought, look, let me just roll the dice. I can always go to business school if I have to. Let me roll the dice, go to another company, Flutterwave. So at the time, the Flutterwave guys were just hanging out. I was giving them advice about how to build a business. But they hadn't, you know, they didn't really have a clear conception of it. They were stuck in their job, all that stuff. So I just said, look, I'll take a risk. I'll take a risk on you guys. I'll go build the business. So I just went 4 people in Lekki Phase 1, Vania Hub, just building. Build that business every day. Eventually we landed Uber as a client, and that completely changed our story, because with the Uber, we landed in Uber, we're able to land Access Bank as a client. And we started building customized payment systems for all these guys. And then, you know, now Flutterwave is a huge company.
Before we go there, I'm going to come to that. Now, I just want to, now your degree was law, right?
Yeah. I studied law.
So how did you pivot in your common word now? In your history? How did you pivot from law to this?
Yeah, you know, I think what it was 3 things, right? Number one, you know, like I said, Pierre opened my eyes because, I mean, for me, I'd gone to the United Nations. I didn't really like it, but I just figured that's what I had to do, right? My other option was be a professor of law. So I'd already, to be honest, I was on that path. Yeah. I was going to do law, you know, write a bunch of law papers, go to law school. But then the fact that somebody can, like with law, you need courts, you need clients, you need an office, you need, at the time, you needed a law library, you needed a law library, you know, you need someone to pay you, you need to get the case, you can't just go to law, like the court, and just do nothing.
Somebody must be in trouble.
Somebody must be in trouble, right? And, I mean, at the time even, you know, it was a very funny thing. I'd written an argument, for a Supreme Court case for my final paper, which was like, it was a very weird legal concept I was trying out, which was like, corporations are people. So at the time, Canada has this thing called the Canadian Declaration of Human Rights or something like that, like a Charter of Human Rights. So I was now saying that you know, protectionism was against that charter, and since corporations are people, protectionism in Canada, which is very rampant, was illegal. So it's just kind of like a weird argument. But, you know, at the end of the day, you couldn't go argue that in front of the Supreme Court because you were not, I wasn't even Canadian, you know, and you need that to even be able to go with me. So I think at the end of the day, I saw this tech thing. It didn't matter that I was an immigrant. I could do it. Anybody could do it. You could be in Lagos and do it. You could be in London and do it. It didn't even matter that you can be in Abuja and do it. It didn't matter you couldn't code. You find people who can code. You find people who can code and you can build something, right? Build trust with people who can code, make them part owners of your company, and you can do something. So I think it just, you know, the whole, you know, tech, the impact you could have with so little overhead was just like, wow, is this possible? And then there were other factors. So obviously, one is I was very passionate about education problems because of the experience I had in Canada. And also very passionate about employability problems. And it just so happened that with Andela, education, employability, tech, all tied in together. And I had experience in all those three. So naturally, that was where I was going to spend my time. And then I would say finally, again, you know, once you start to, this thing, the way it works really is that, you have to really kind of be the kind of person who thinks outside of the limitations of your environment. So, I mean, I had to go to law school in Nigeria. anybody who's been to law school in Nigeria knows someone like me cannot survive there. I'm too much of a rebel. So the thing for me was, look, am I going to go and be this institutional guy, working within the bounds of a very, very stringent system, if you know how law works in Nigeria? Or was I just going to chart my own path? And it wasn't easy because, my parents were expecting a lawyer, right? They had paid for one, And so for me to just carry the degree, they had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in, and hand it to them and be like, okay, bye guys. I'm going to do my own thing in this tech thing no one knew anything about. Because this was 2013. There was no tech like that in Nigeria. It wasn't really something people did. So it was, I just had to shake off people's expectations of me and just move in my own direction. And so that's how I got here.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking to me, because that's basically what happened to me too. I mean, as I described in the book, medicine was my father's dream. I was already in med school, and I remember my dad was now late, and my late uncle at the time was like, uncertainty. I mean, there's something certain. You know how many people want to get into medicine and they can't get in? Now you have something certain and you're leaving it to go somewhere else that you don't have. No university was expecting me in the States when I left. But it was just because you wanted to go do your own thing. So I clearly understand. I mean, I clearly understand what you'd have gone through then. But nevertheless, I mean, they say the end justifies the means, right?
Absolutely.
Now, in what you're doing in the tech space, your impact, I noticed something you said. You said impact, where impact with so little overheads. An area where you could have a lot of impact with so little overheads. Those were the reasons why you started. But then guess what? You've done so well now in that space that you were considered one of the top 100 influential Africans, right?
They have all these awards. I don't look at them, I work for somebody else.
But I'm going to, we're going to talk a little more on tech, and I think we'll take a short break. But before we do, I was just studying the Africa Report a few days ago and looking into the, Africa, right? Pan-Africa. Yes. And it says that in 2020, I mean, the COVID year, in fact, I think the Africa startup did really well. Because it was just about a 30% dip in investment.
Considerably better than most other industries.
So about 1.42 billion were invested, Africa-wide compared to about, compared to about 2 billion in 2019. But then what I also then found was the fact that they talked about the leading 5 venture capital firms, that drove those investments: Egypt, Algebra Ventures, Dutch Development Bank, Japan, Kipul Africa Ventures, US, the Y Combinator, and the 500 startups that we know. But I then noticed that with the fact that so much investment, were coming in, this is billions of dollars, right? US dollars, not any of our African currency. The leading VCs were literally, again, the only African VC I see here is Egypt. All the others were foreign.
Foreign
money, foreign
money coming in.
But then, what Nigeria also was the most attractive from what the report said. We led Kenya. I mean, we had $307 million invested in 2019, in 2020 just alone. And we were ahead of Kenya, Egypt, South Africa, and Ghana. So, but how come, with the size of our economy and the size of Nigeria and Africa, how come we don't have any Nigerian VC amongst the VC firms, amongst these investors?
To be very honest with you, I think it's also helpful to keep in mind that it's a very young industry. Nigeria just has this penchant, or as we call it, grace, for being very, growing very fast and things. If you looked at those rankings in 2012, we were after Egypt. Then they'll mention maybe 2 other markets, Johannesburg or something, and then before they mention Nigeria. So it's a relatively new phenomenon. But the second thing is, a lot of this stuff is structural for a whole bunch of reasons. So first of all, when you think about the investment environment and climate, some of the money that may actually be coming in may actually just be routing out of Nigeria through some of these foreign domiciles and backing. You understand what I'm trying to say? Because I can't imagine that a global investor would take such risk on Nigeria without a clear understanding of the local, you know. And I even know of situations where even the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund would like be the only way they would be able to invest at their scale and size was if they were working through like some foreign investors, right? Yeah. So these are some things to take note of. Second of all, from a legal and policy perspective, we haven't yet set the ground for the creation of local VC. I remember CC Hub spent a lot of time and money trying to build a Nigerian VC firm, but it wasn't possible to work for a lot of very tiny reasons. Structural issues. Number one, you know, I was saying earlier, it was only this year, after 30 years of banking in Nigeria, only this 2021 is the first year that you had a law saying banks can invest in venture capital.
I'm going to pause you for a second so that we can go on a short break. But I want you to hold your thoughts there. And the reason is this ties very well with Paula's TED Talk, Paula and us TED Talk a few years ago, where he said, who will own our unicorns? Let's hold our talk and we'll go on a short break.
Okay, fantastic.
Still continuing in our series of entrepreneurship and hustles, it's my pleasure to introduce our episode today, which is art and tech.
We need to stop building for ourselves. We need to build for the world. The challenge for the African is we have to improve our level of curiosity. We have to question things. Entrepreneurs are our best chance at moving this continent forward.
You believe that there is a strong fusion between art and technology?
Absolutely. Art, they say, sometimes is a documentation of our living history. There's a huge misconception that technology is coded. Technology is not software. Technology is not computers.
Thank you.
Technology is not coded.
Please join me on YouTube every Thursday at 6 p.m. West African time for another exciting and engaging episode of the Never an Afterthought show.
Greetings, guys. Well, I'm sure you've been having a fun time with Iyi, but if you're just joining us, you're welcome to another exciting episode of the Never an Afterthought show. Today we've been discussing tech investment, and I've had no other person but Iyinoluwa Aboyeji to discuss this with me in the last 30 minutes we've been on this. So getting ready to wrap up now. Don't forget hashtag the Never an Afterthought, and you can use this to join and continue this conversation across all our social media channels. Twitter at NAA_book, Facebook and Instagram at NA Afterthought. You can always drop me a note by email, which is podcast@neveranafterthought.com. And yes, I can see your comments already, but you can keep them coming using the comment section on the platform wherein you are listening or watching me. So we've been discussing tech investment in the last half hour with Iyinoluwa Aboyeji here with me, and he's still here with me, and we're just going to continue our conversation. It's been an interesting time, Iyin. I doubt if we'll finish our conversation today, but I'm sure we'll keep
the conversation going.
Oh yeah, because from the comments that I'm seeing right now, I mean, reading from our audience, it looks like it's going to be around 2 at some point. But just before the break, we were talking about, you know, from everything you were telling me about the ranking of investment, and you said just 8 years ago, it wasn't this.
No,
I mean, now Nigeria is leading the pack, right? But that was not the case. And, you know, the whole concept of tech, it's a new phenomenon for us in Nigeria. And I was saying to you that a few years ago, I think it must have been 2 or 3 years ago, that Kola and I delivered this TED Talk he gave, and it says, who will own our unicorn? And using a lot of our startups, you know, the great startup ideas that are emerging out of Nigeria, Flutterwave, you've spoken about Flutterwave, Andela, and all the others, to say, who are they really going to be the owners? Can we really say they're Nigerian businesses when really it's mostly foreign investors that are investing in these businesses? So that's the point I wanted to get to when you started to explain the reason why we don't, why we're not having Nigerian-owned VC firms
yeah.
making these investments. And
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that.
So like I said, right, like, I was trying to explain that, first of all, this year is the first year in over 30 years you're having banks being allowed to invest in VC, and every other country in the world, that's not the case, right?
Wow.
Other countries, all the big VC firms you see, they get their money from banks and pension funds. In Nigeria, VCs get their money from individuals, typically foreign individuals, and foreign DFIs.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? So there's the average Nigerian is not benefiting from any of this startup growth. Then when you think about, okay, what are the other structural barriers, right? Look at the...
so now that you said that the Finance Act now allows banks...
Yeah, Investment and Securities
How
Act.
did it happen? Did it just...
Yeah.
It was a lot of work?
Oh, yeah, it was a lot of work. I spent a lot of time in Abuja. A lot of time with Senator Oba, amazing human being.
Was
committee chair for finance.
Yeah.
So he saw that was ridiculous. Why would we not be able to invest in our own startups, as Nigerians?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Why would we leave all of that opportunity to foreign investors to do? So, we had the conversation, made the necessary amendments, had to work very hard to drag a lot of people along, especially because of everything going on, around the BOFIA. As you know, it's very, very hotly contested bill. But it made it happen. Banks are now allowed to put up to 10% of their assets under management into venture capital.
So won that one.
Now there's pensions. We're not even started. I'll be honest with you, we're not even started. There's some law that allows pensions to put 5% of their assets in something that could include venture capital, but it's still super early. The real reason why the work that remains to be done, two pieces of work in my opinion, right? The first one is the Investment and Securities Act. So the biggest challenge that Nigerian venture capital has is, if you went to the SEC and said you wanted to start a fund, the SEC mandates that you pay to them 0.25% of the value of your fund every year. Now, this is the problem with that. Tech companies grow so quickly that the value, unrealized value particularly, can shoot up to the point where it's not sustainable. Which is why you're just asked to pay fees. They don't want to ask you to pay a percentage of the value of your assets under management. And in fact, most countries and most managers have moved away from percentage-based fees, because I think they're assuming that you get 2% of your assets under management. Meanwhile, you only get 2% of deployed capital or 2% of capital committed. So these are very technical things. So as you could tell that whoever was making these laws might not have been as familiar with venture capital as an asset class, which is understandable. It's very new. So they may have made some issues with the laws. But once these laws are amended, then it becomes more viable. The second issue is, the reality is, Nigeria is a country that, for very good reason, has fixed exchange controls and capital controls. But the downside of that is that if you're an investor, global investor, or even a local investor, you do want to understand upfront how you're going to get your money out.
You must consider exit before you get it.
Yeah. So what has to happen, what other countries have done very well is they've created these things called, like in Dubai, they have something called the Dubai International Finance Center. You understand what I'm saying? So what happens, Rwanda is now starting one called the Rwanda International Finance Center, or Kigali International Finance Center. So these are like offshore zones where you have your banking, you have your new types of securities laws and all that. You can manage those assets offshore, and the government has no right to stop you from taking out your capital. But obviously there are approaches, if you're incorporated as like an FZ within that zone and you're Nigerian, when the money gets to you, you still have to pay your tax. You understand what I'm saying? But while it's in that zone, it's not subject to taxes. It's not subject to...
Just like you have free trade zones. And
everywhere, free trade zones and everywhere. So that's the model that I think that once you can tick those two other boxes, you will see the capital show up.
So Dubai has done it. I mean,
Dubai is doing it. Kigali is doing it.
We're going to mirror what Dubai does. And if Dubai has done it, if Kigali has done it, perhaps you need to drive the ecosystem again in that
No,
direction.
we're pushing.
Those push.
We're pushing it.
So we can fairly say that with the one for the banks down, and if we work on the others, perhaps in the next 10 years we'll begin to see.
Yeah, it might take less time.
Okay.
It take less time. I hope it won't take 10 years.
Well, I'm just
because
saying.
Hopefully.
So let's say within this decade.
Yeah, within this decade.
Let's
Fair
see,
enough. Let's see.
Because I think it's really important, right? Because if we say now, Florida Way, and the others, as much as we say they are Nigerian startups, right? Because the founders are
Nigerians,
who really owns them?
I mean, they're owned by Americans. I'll be very honest.
Look at Paystack.
Look at
the accident just happened. The stripes, So that's the question at the end of the day, really. That brings me now to your role when I was introducing you as the GP of Future Africa. There's something that caught everyone's attention: the community for mission-driven innovators. What does that mean?